It's interesting because the last time we did a filmed interview would have been 2 years ago, I think, 2019. And one of the things that we spoke about, and that was the Priory, and this kind of sense of community that you get from the Glaswegian scene, which is a kind of a thread that comes out quite a lot in these interviews.
Yeah.
In the last year with lockdown, that's been taken away to a certain extent, that sense of community that you get from your music. What do you learn about your relationship to music and being in a band when something like that happens, and from that experience?
Well, for me, I'd say when you've got this kind of tight-knit group around you, you can feel like kind of supported in a big way. Having that kind of immediately taken away almost makes you feel very kind of isolated and alone in a way, and almost feel that you can't really get back to that in a lot of ways, especially kind of based on the situation that everyone's had. But I think it also allows you a lot of time to kind of develop yourself as well, and maybe in a way when you get into a scene, there's a lot of kind of similarities, and when you're able to break away from that, it's almost like you're able to maybe put your own stamp on things a bit more. You know, you're able to kind of have a bit of kind of reflection on everything else you've done, and you kind of start to learn more about what maybe makes you stand out, or what kind of makes you tick, or what makes your band function, or whatever it is that way.
So I mean, what were the outcomes of that for you? When you're sitting there about learning what it is that makes you special, what is it that you've taken?
Well, especially being away from everyone and kind of the writing process they went through for the album. It was mostly just kind of learning how we operate together and how we bring out the best in each other in terms of writing and stuff like that. Is it still there? Nah. But, yeah, especially with the album, learning to kind of focus on every individual and what they're wanting to do, especially say in regards to an entire song. I think being away from everyone, or being away from that kind of scene, it's almost like we're immediately working with each other a lot more, especially in that kind of initial stage of lockdown. There was a lot of kind of direct contact, at least in terms of songwriting. We might not have been together physically, but there was a lot of back and forth in terms of writing, and a lot of focus on trying to, because it's hard, you know, like especially on your own, and when you're in a band you want it to function in a way that you can all kind of contribute. But what we managed to find is that we're able to now have someone be the kind of primary writer in a song, and the rest of us are able to just kind of work on that and accentuate it for them, basically.
So when you went to do the album, was it 2 weeks? You went and recorded for thereabouts?
I think it was
not closer to like three?
Probably like 3 or 4 in the end up, like with everything factored in, but obviously some like pre-production and stuff in there as well. But yeah, pretty much about 2 or 3 weeks it was.
I mean, it's interesting what you're saying about how lockdown kind of allowed you to realise what it was that was special about your band and what allowed you to stand out. Is that something that also happens when you're in that process and you're recording?
Yeah, certainly.
You go into that kind of isolated chamber?
Yeah, I definitely think so, especially with the manner of the way we tried to improve our writing throughout the process of lockdown, and then taking that into writing the album. It almost felt like the songs themselves were, I don't know, it seemed to be, there definitely was a shift for us in terms of we felt things were like growing legs in a way for a new sound, and it came out of that kind of refer back to like each individual having their own kind of place in the band. What we kind of found is because we had so many different ideas, we were then able to work on that in a way that allowed everyone to kind of have their say and have their own piece in there. But we also managed to make it in a way that, because we've got this experience with each other, we're able to make it in a way so that it all kind of fits together and it doesn't all kind of sound disjointed. It all runs nicely together.
How much of that, you know, ensuring that it doesn't sound disjointed is a conscious thing, and how much of it is something that just happens naturally throughout the process?
It's really conscious. I mean, like there was a few, so when we went in to record, we didn't just have the songs that came out, there was at least an extra 4 or 5, and some got dropped purely based on the fact that it would either, there was maybe already a song on the album that was similar in vibe to that tune, or there was one maybe that just didn't fit anything at all. But not to say it was a bad song or they were bad songs, but it was just when you're writing such like varied kind of songs on the album, you still kind of want some sense of cohesion there. I mean, obviously that will always come when you've got Rab and Colin still singing, so regardless of what the music's doing, that cohesion is going to be there. But there is still like a general sounding vibe that you should be able to feel through all the tunes. So even if they all come in and they're all different, as long as like they two are singing on it, I think it's all still going to have that flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting from my kind of point of view as a listener, when I hear your sound, there's this juxtaposition at the heart of it where there's an undeniable level of craft that goes into it, and particularly structurally, they're always very, very tightly put together. And yet at the same time, you have this tendency where you just enjoy turning up the guitar, cranking it up and going for it.
Aye.
How do you kind of balance that in the process as creators? How do you kind of handle that and manage that?
Yeah, I think especially in an album, I think that's really important. It's trying to find that energy as you're talking of, like that isn't so much say technique or finesse, but more just vibe and enjoying something, and just the heart of like really being in the music. And we were trying to find a kind of balance between that and, as you said, when it comes to structure, we've tried to go a lot heavier with that now. Like when it comes to harmony, like just in terms of, we felt like we'd started to learn how to write songs, and now we've started to try and kind of unpack it a wee bit and see what we can add to that, rather than now starting from the standpoint of not really knowing at all how to go about writing a song to having a set structure. We're just trying to adapt that and play with it, and I think on the album we managed to find a perfect balance between those kind of two things. It's that we've worked on structure to a point where it would be identifiable to people who are listening, especially people who followed us for a while. They'd be able to see some kind of progress with that, but we also think just generally is kind of more entertaining and captures that kind of that vibe, that kind of feeling that we have when we're playing, when we're writing, even just when we're kind of like thinking about the band, and as we are here at the studio and stuff, like working on things. It is tough though. It's hard to kind of get a balance between the two, because sometimes you do end up veering too much off into something that's really structured, and maybe it's a bit too polished. You don't want to lose that kind of
overthink it almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny to think about as well with a debut record, that part of it is trying to capture what it is that you've done so far while still pushing forward. At what points of the process are you kind of most looking ahead and thinking about the future, and at what points of the process are you kind of most consolidating your past and ensuring that that spirit is still there in the music?
Yeah, so we wanted to try and keep it as many original songs as possible, and especially kind of the newer ones that we had been writing. So it's kind of like David said, we probably had about 20 odd like solid demos that we were ready with, but we had to kind of immediately cut that down. Can you go back to the question? Sorry, what were you saying? Just so you get back.
Yeah, just at what points of the process are you kind of looking ahead and thinking about the future of the band and where you want it to go? And at what points?
So going with like kind of new songs, we ended up only having, I wouldn't say the song, but we only had one old song that they put on, and it was almost like the kind of statement as here's where we kind of started, here's what people liked when they started, and we would like you to compare that to all the rest of this, which we feel this fits in with the rest of this music, and it's a great starting point, but look at the rest of this kind of journey and see where you think it's kind of came from that. So in terms of looking furthest ahead, there's a lot of songs that we really have tried to push. We always try to make things not too impossible to play on stage, whereas we try to make things now that maybe go above it in terms of guitar tracks, how many layers we have vocal harmonies, maybe working more than the number of vocals we can literally do on stage. It's like pushing things in that way for more entertainment for us, for more entertainment for the fans, but also to kind of show that we're capable of it, that we are like trying to learn more about it and put that into the music. But it's all been fun as well. Nothing's been like too stressful about it. Wow, man, I must be covering honey.
Is that where you brought Josh in as well, for the kind of live setup in order to kind of fully capture that if you're expanding it in the studio?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we've adapted because we were never kind of scared of putting synth and stuff in. We'd always talked about having someone playing synth or keyboard or something along those lines.
Oh my God.
Deciding that it was going to be like a major factor in the set, it was like, oh well.
Don't anger it.
I know, I don't want to.
Don't anger it.
I don't want to, but it's getting so close.
Oh.
It's doing this pure
Dance.
Yeah.
The dance.
Yeah, it's checking me up and down.
If that checks me, I'm out.
Right, I think we're alright. I think we're okay. Right, okay.
Stomp it.
What? Yeah, I think we're alright.
Yeah, bringing Josh in.
Yeah, bringing Josh in. So we've been thinking about it for a while, and Josh is genuinely the person we had in mind, so we weren't kind of ever worried about having to go out and find a specific person for it. And it's not even in particular that he is a keyboard or synth player, he's just a really talented friend that we have that can kind of really pick up any instrument really. We could ask him to do something, we know he'd be able to achieve it, but certainly with the album in mind, we were wanting to progress the live sound in tandem with the album, because the album obviously having all these extra things that have been added that might not seem familiar for some people. We would like to still emulate that live, even though I'm saying we're making it more challenging. We'd like to try and get it as close as possible, and having Josh there makes it so much easier, not even just for synth, but just backup in general for guitars or whatever it needs to be, whatever kind of sound we need to put in. We've got someone there to kind of back us up and let us still kind of continue doing what we all are, like still serve the roles that we all have in the band.
I guess that kind of extra oomph to it as well, like performance-wise live.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be quite, kind of adds another level to it.
Layer, yeah.
So.
I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about the progression of both the live setup and the setup when you're in the studio and where you want to take the sound. How do you feel the relationship between them has evolved throughout the band's kind of trajectory? Have they always moved in parallel like they are now?
It's a kind of catching up thing, I think, sometimes, where maybe the recordings were a wee bit ahead of the way we were playing, and we were having to catch up with that, and then there maybe was a gap where we hadn't recorded in a while and we felt like we'd worked hard in that kind of gap, and we were then having to make, say, new material, kind of catch up with where we felt we were with the band. I think certainly with the writing for the album it's the same thing. It's like we felt like we could challenge ourselves a bit more. I felt like we could try and push the boundaries a wee bit, try and challenge the writing a bit more, and not be as kind of, I don't know, as afraid to be like really poppy, you know, and like, or like really heavy, you know, just either like not have it sit in the middle of both and just kind of go, I can go right in one direction or right in another direction. Like we feel like we've got a lot of freedom with it, to be honest, where we're like, it's good. I think it's kind of like the number of us writing, I just feel like it's, you get to just, there's not a lot of pressure on you to be the guy or to be the person. It's like you just get to add to other people's songs a lot of the time, or they get to add to yours. It's a great experience for that.
When do you think you take more risks? When you're working on the song from scratch yourself, or when you're adding ideas to someone else's song?
Oh, definitely the latter, I think.
I think I'll take risks in terms of if I'm adding something to somebody's song, I'll just go for it and be like, look, here's what I think I should do. But if they're not in here, then it's fair. But I always just, I'm like, because it's not my song, I guess I'm not as particular about it. So I'm just like, here's what I've got in my head immediately for this idea, I'll put that in.
Yeah, it's the same with the drums actually, because most of the way we worked with writing the album mostly was, because it was lockdown, we kind of send each other GarageBand files, and it was like sending back what you were kind of like thinking for like that song or that vibe, whatever. But most of the drums, it was just like do your set one. So I was like, okay, I could do better than that.
Yeah, totally.
But then it kind of transformed a lot of the songs, and it was the same with adding like things like bass and guitar and then all the other stuff. It was quite a nice, like, I don't know, it was like a wee surprise. You're like, ooh, because it's something that changed it.
Bring some demos to kind of the forefront. Like we'd all have different feelings about what one we liked at a certain time, and sometimes even just Kel's like, oh, I've went on done the drums for that, and you go on and that's their new favourite, because it's totally evolved and changed for that. So it's a good relationship we have that way. But I think for me in particular, I think I get more particular about when people are adding stuff to my songs than I do the opposite way. I just go willy-nilly, just do whatever.
Damn, okay.
Might not always work, but it'll work some of the time at least.
When you're pushing forward like that and moving the sound on and taking these risks, if you're a little bit unsure of it sometimes, who do you turn to for musical advice? Who would you speak to?
It's a tough one. I mean, I guess if we're in the studio and stuff, like the obvious kind of closest people to us is like Johnny and Marshall. Certainly, if I mean, they'll even say like there's no kind of boundaries there. Like they will say if they feel like something, like we might have a section where we think they've got some solid chords down and everything else is working, but there might just not be that riff that's in there, or there might just be like some kind of ambient synth sound that just needs to be there. Like we're always open to the kind of suggestions. But in terms of advice, I think again it's like we go in with the songs and maybe in our head we think they're finished, but we all know there's always a possibility that they're not. So like we just got like, here we go, this is what we think's this is good, and then kind of work back from there. But no, it's I think them two specifically, but I think we have a lot of friends who it's good to talk about music with a lot, but we probably don't get enough situations where we're jamming with people or whatever. That'd probably be a better kind of outlet, is to try and get some ideas from somewhere. But again, I think just the number of us and like the fact that we kind of varied tastes as well kind of helps us. So always keeps things fresh, I think. But yeah, I think we've got that kind of relationship with each other as well, being able to kind of look to each other for advice, to be like, well, I don't feel the best about a demo, but David really likes it, then that's another reason to keep that going. You know, it's another reason to keep that song going, even though he might not have the belief, or same with vice versa. Like there's plenty of times that there's demos we didn't use on the album that were kind of like that, where I didn't want it and they wanted to, but it just comes down to like what works best.
Yeah, totally.
What's the last piece of advice that someone in the band gave you, that you kind of sticks out in your mind?
Shut the fuck up.
I'm trying to think, man. It's it's like no just saying this in a cheesy way, right? But we're all like we're kind of best pals. So when it comes to advice, that it's not so much for the band. I feel like we look after each other in life in general. So there's a lot of stuff that might not be particularly helpful for the band, but it'll be helpful for life. So it's better for us in general, if you know what I'm saying by that. But I can't really think of anything specifically we've said to each other in terms of advice for the band, but I just feel like we have good advice to each other in general for life. Do you know what I mean? Have you got one?
Kyle, slow down.
That's definitely, I mean, that's something that like,
that's not advice, that's like a command.
Yeah, that's not
advice. There's no suggestion about it anymore, like, we've tried that.
And then we're now doing it for real now. I'm now playing to a click
he's been forced to play a click because he can't be trusted to play at a regular speed on his own.
But that was a good move. Like the click has been a great move, because it's now we are starting to realise how some of the songs should be played. Like they
Oh,
shouldn't,
it's
they
hilarious.
shouldn't all be played at
Going
200
from,
miles an
like,
hour. Like
playing
some
like
of them
a
are actually
song.
quite slow. We just don't remember recording them that way.
It's ridiculous, and I can't even play it properly.
it's
I'm
good.
like, oh my god, did
No,
we record this?
probably that. Yeah. Well, advising him to slow down. I don't think we have advised each other. I don't know if we could really advise each other on the band. I feel like we're still winging everything.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well what you were saying about, when we're talking to people that you would turn to talk about music with. You mentioned both Johnny and Marshall, but also you would speak to friends about music. How do those kind of conversations differ? How does the way that you speak about music with Johnny and Marshall and the way that you speak about music with your friends compare? And what do you gain from each of those types of conversations?
I think when you're talking to your pals, you're talking about the stuff you do like a lot of the time. And I feel like with Johnny and Marshall, that you might be trying to get to the nitty gritty as to what works and what doesn't work. So I kind of a lot of the time you might be trying to. It's not like trying to make things perfect, but it's trying to I don't know. I don't want to say like when we're trying like desperately not to be cringe or not to be a certain way, but you're trying to kind of keep that kind of element of coolness that you thought you have when you're writing this kind of idea that you have as to how your band should sound. Like you're trying to more adapt that when you're speaking to them, whereas when you're speaking to your friends, you're maybe talking about all your influences or talking about what you like about their music or what they like about your music or other bands in the scene and stuff like that. But it's more, you're not kind of getting, for me anyway, you're not really getting into the nitty gritty of like all the really technical side of things and stuff that kind of takes away almost from music, stuff that is really important still regardless, but it's kind of like disassembling a joke in a way, it's like it kind of takes away from the actual song itself when you're sitting talking about like how many like beats in the bar or like maybe a snare hit that's out of place, but it's all still important. But that's the main difference between those kind of conversations, is being on that kind of more technical side, looking to make sure everything is done properly, as opposed to having a more kind of free conversation with your pals where you can just kind of more talk about music in a kind of more vague way, as opposed to being dead specific about like technique or anything like that.
What do you think is more important to the way that you make music, life experience or musical experience?
It's a tough one because it depends on what the experience is. But I'd say,
I don't feel like I've got a lot of musical experience.
Yeah,
So it must be life experience.
it must be. There's something just like because we've stuck at it even though we've not got the experience or the kind of.
Totally.
I've got the experience of being in a band and playing gigs, but like that doesn't translate to knowing your music theory all that well. And I don't have the time or patience to sit and learn that. And
I know fuck all about drums, literally.
And I just maybe assumed that you'll probably pick that up. You don't pick that up. It never comes until you actually start to do it. So
but
it can't be that experience.
The writing and stuff is, but the thing is, it's like we've never felt like we'll learn more about say wee things like harmony and stuff, and just I usually just I kind of like I'll gloss over something and I'll pretend I've understood it, and then I'll try and apply that in music. But like when it comes to the music experience, especially at the start, because like I had been in a band, but we hadn't really. I'd only played like a couple like wee gigs and I was really young, and the rest is I hadn't really done anything, so almost being at that kind of embryonic stage at the beginning, you know what I mean? Like we weren't really, I think Marshall said to us once he kind of like preferred it when we didn't know how to write songs. So he said like, we were like in terms of like we didn't know what chords went with what, so there maybe be things that didn't make sense musically, but it would just be entertaining. Like it still wouldn't take away from the song itself.
Is there any way you can get back to that?
No, probably. I do think it swings back and forth. I'm only really kind of thinking from my own writing perspective here, but it does swing back and forth. I'll go trying to be really kind of fancy with things, or trying to make things more complicated than I've made them before. And sometimes you just find you have like 2 chords on a wee riff or something, and that can evolve into something that's a lot more than all that kind of effort, But sometimes it feels hard. Like I often think of things like, I don't know, like when I wrote Dimitri, it was something that just happened like very quickly, and I've never really looked back on it. But when I try and do songs now, it doesn't seem to like come as fast as that. Like I have to wait a lot more time to maybe figure something out, or something's half finished, or I can't get to the end of an idea, whereas that just seemed to come out like dead quickly. So sometimes it feels like you're trying to grasp something that's like, it's impossible, it's really impossible. Like I don't know if maybe we've lost it, maybe the time's passed for me already and I'm finished. But no, it's I don't know how you get back to it. It's tough. It's like almost like you don't know what you're doing and you try and learn, and then you start to think you know what you're doing, but maybe you're better off just in that stage of that wilderness of just trying to like, grasp at things and go, oh, that's a song.
Yeah, because you just kind of become like confidently incorrect about everything.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
No worries, man.